Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a mechanical analysis. This is for TheSandbox. For those of you who don't know, TheSandbox is a deliberate practice training program, which we have coaches from a variety of fields. And one of the sessions that I do is a mechanical analysis. So I have with me a sandboxer here, Brian Williams. How are you doing, man?
Pretty good. How are you, man?
Brian is known as the giant gnome or a giant gnome or larger than life, I think, is his Smurf. But yeah, man, we're just going to basically go over different mechanical things that you're doing and inefficiencies. And we're going to write them all down. And we're going to say, okay, which of these are the most significant? And we'll try to devise a way that you can deliberately improve those things rather than saying, oh yeah, those are problems I have. I think I'll get better at them eventually.
Yeah, that sounds good.
Being very diligent with your worker pairing, which is admirable.
I give it my best shot.
Cool. A little bit early on the workers being sent to the gas there, but very small. It's good that you're sending them one at a time and trying to line that up. It's one of the more difficult things to do consistently. How often would you say that you send the drones one at a time into gas as opposed to just trying to box three and sending them?
In the early game, it's between 80 and 90% of the time. As the game goes on, like probably the 3 base saturation point on, usually I'm just boxing that same sort of like 80 to 90%.
Mm-hmm. That's a pretty good way to do it, especially because it's a pretty long action sequence, grabbing each individually. And usually later towards the game, you're going to have more important things you're going to need to do. So that tiny bit of efficiency gained, or rather lack of minerals lost, is not going to be a big deal. So that seems really on point so far. Like you're using camera keys or using the base location key there?
I'm using camera keys to hit my injects.
Nice.
Until the very late game, again, where I switched to sort of the backspace method.
Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Because I just don't have the mechanical ability yet to use the camera key inject method when I have a bunch of other things to do, like microing my army and stopping drops and all of those different things. So I'm not fast enough to consistently hit camera key injects.
Oh, okay.
Towards like the 4th and 5th base time.
That's interesting. And you find that it's easier because you only have to worry about one button. You just kind of go back and forth.
Yeah, and I don't ever get wandering queen syndrome, so pretty on point with that.
Yep, and it looks like you have an injecting queen control group. Is that how you're injecting?
Yeah, so occasionally I will just grab the queen, but usually I'm trying to hit 5 and then the camera key and then hit the inject.
Yeah, so that camera location is a little bit off.
Yeah,
right?
It is.
You set your camera locations in the beginning of the game, right? When everything starts up?
Yeah, I do.
Okay, so just a small thing. And at that point in time, you want to be as accurate as possible because you have a lot of time available to you.
Yeah, definitely.
To make sure you get it right. And it's sort of this situation where you get to practice mouse accuracy and specifically mini-map mouse accuracy, which is sort of its own thing because you're interacting visually with the mini-map and you're going to do that a lot. So it's just this nice little 6 or 7 bases or however many bases you're going to set up in the beginning of the game. You can sort of focus in, be as accurate as possible, and then over time that'll actually transfer over into accuracy in more time-sensitive situations.
For sure.
Yeah, and it prevents that sort of like, oh, I'm going to expand. Wait, it's not on the base. Slide. Cool. Small thing. When you have a little bit of a tendency, and some players have this a little bit more than others, to click multiple times when you want to do one thing. So you wanted to send that worker over to the hatchery and you clicked twice, which is not bad. A lot of players are like clicking 18 times like, oh God, I gotta get it over there. So twice, not bad. Still something that you can work on. And it's one of those things like boxing and clicking. It's once you get used to the clicking instead of the boxing, it's going to start to feel really, really good and clean and fast.
Yeah, for sure.
You just boxed your spawning pool. Like giant targets, like box.
Yeah, I definitely need to work on clicking a bit more.
A couple of settings here. One of them is going to be alerts off. So all those alerts that appear over in the left side, you may want to experiment with those off.
Yeah,
generally speaking, you can avoid having them on. Is there anything that you use them for specifically that you wouldn't be using other things for?
No. So, I mean, I should just probably turn them off. I just haven't yet because usually they haven't been in the way. Although more recently I've been misclicking on them.
Yeah, that's an awful feeling. Like you're in the middle of an important engagement and you like clicking like, oh my God, I don't care that my queen just finished. The other setting too, that you may want to consider messing around with is having health bars set to damaged.
To damaged? Okay.
Basically what happens is your eyes have to take in so much data, right?
Sure.
And what damage is going to do is it's going to produce basically, if you don't see a health bar, you know it's full. If you don't see an energy bar, you know it's full. And at first it's a little bit weird. But once you get used to it, it's a lot faster to sort of recognize what's going on.
Okay.
And focusing down weakened units and pulling back weakened units and things like that.
And that doesn't get rid of energy bars?
It only gets rid of energy bars when they're completely full.
Oh. Okay.
And that is, I think, the one downside. If I had, the opportunity to ask Blizzard to mess with it, I'd say leave the energy bars alone, just make it health bars. But for the time being, that is the one drawback. So same thing. By the way, you just boxed your.
I always do that. I do that for
your buildings,
for upgrade buildings, and I have no idea why.
Yeah. And the funny thing too is like when you're boxing buildings, units will always take priority. So if you happen to have like a Zergling nearby, you're actually not going to click that upgrade structure. So very unlikely situation, but were to happen and you were to miss an upgrade and you thought the upgrade was going the whole time, like you can lose a game like that. So
yeah,
definitely not worth it.
I can imagine doing that with infestor energy upgrades and stuff like that. That would suck.
Also, another very small thing. Whenever you're egg hotkeying and you control click the eggs, if you practice control clicking the egg that's right next to the number 1, the one that's always in the top left,
yeah,
it'll always be the same exact location every single time. So you won't have to look down and think, okay, where are the eggs? Now I'm clicking them. It'll just be an automatic, I know where this part of the screen is. Just like you can sort of click on the mini map all the time because you know where it is. It's always in the same place. So another very small thing. Like I said, you play very clean mechanically. So the things that I'm bringing up are going to be a lot of small things. Okay. So what happened there was a little bit of a perception action cycle lag.
Okay.
So you reach the point in the engagement where micro is no longer required. And you kind of looked at it for a little while and you're like, micro is no longer required, and inject.
Yeah.
So decreasing the amount of time and for the most part, I haven't made a comment on this because those things haven't happened yet, but just actively looking for those moments in time where you're like, okay, no more micro is required here. I'm going to just let these units fight, moving on to do the next thing that's necessary. What was that? Was that a little bit of Wandering Queen or Wandering Transfused Queen? What happened there?
We can go back and check. I wasn't exactly sure what happened there.
There it is. Yeah, that was a transfuse.
Yeah.
So what happened there was you selected your control group to try and transfuse in the fight instead of clicking.
Yeah. That's
probably the biggest error you've made mechanically in these games so far. And it's a pain in the ass because you have to go collect your queens. So quick thing as far as crisis management goes in that kind of a situation. First thing that you do is you just select the control group and hit stop or hold position.
Yeah.
And then use your location keys to go click on the queen and not make, I think, 3 or 4 boxes per queen and then send it back. So that's probably, the biggest. We have the Wandering Transfused Queen. I've actually never seen that before. That's
That actually happens, I think, a fair bit to me in my games.
That's awesome. Not that it happens, but it's awesome that we found a repetitive mistake. That's really good. I was thinking we weren't going to find any, but this is great. So we're going to hit that from two angles. One, when it happens, mechanically, what's the best way to deal with it? Two, let's try to make that never happen again.
Yeah.
The habit of using a control group to transfuse. It is much faster in that scenario, but
less
run into this
less
problem.
Consistent.
Right. So you're going to want to click the queen and transfuse, or if you're deciding, okay, there's going to be a fight up here, just make a control group, make a transfuse queen control group on control group 3 or something like that.
Yeah. I think it'd be faster just to, click the one queen the one time than to make a new control group. Unless I'm consistently fighting in that location and that queen is consistently doing a transfusion.
Right. So this is going to be one of those areas where game sense and decision making and strategy overlap with mechanics. The correct decision mechanically is going to basically deal with your game sense. And if you can correctly predict, okay, I'm going to have 3 or 4 engagements in here, like it's a parade push into my 4th base ET or something like that, then it's like, okay, set up that control group, because you need like 2 to 3 uses of the control group before you start making gains on the fact that you took the time to set the control group up in the first place. So
for sure.
Yeah. So isolated incident like this, you don't think it's going to happen again. Just make sure you're clicking the queen. And basically the idea should be, no matter what happens, you never use your injecting queen control group to do transfuses.
Yeah.
Okay. So that was a very extreme situation of the many clicks. In that situation, you had a bunch of roaches. You wanted to send them to a location and then attack. So all you need is move your camera. So probably click the mini map, because it was a ways up, but you might want to scroll. In any case, you're moving your vision up. Then you click on a location and shift click attack.
Yeah.
The one problem with that is that sometimes the AI will freak out a bit and they'll just sort of run around in a circle before they start attacking. But the advantage of it is it's the fastest execution, and you can come back to that group if you need to micromanage it. Okay. So when you're in the situation where you want a really fast execution, make sure you're doing that. But either way, 19 clicks to do something that 2 clicks can do is a no-no.
Yeah.
Okay, that 52 control group is all your roaches, including the ones that are off to the side. And you have to rebox. Yeah. And you have to rebox every single time you do a thing.
Yeah.
So I think this is one of those situations where you have to think about it ahead of time and say, this is a group of units that are going off to attack something. I don't want to control them when I'm using my main army control group. So you need to separate them, either through the control group steal function, or if that's not available to you, then the normal, shift click a bunch of roaches and create, or you grab the workers, or you grab the roaches they're going to harass, send them off, rebox, and then create control group.
Yeah.
And that'll allow you a lot faster going back and forth between that harass group. So in that whole sequence of actions you had there, you had to keep clicking the mini map, keep rebox selecting over and over again, where you could have been double tapping pretty much the whole time. This is a fairly controversial idea because people like to spam, and spam is nice. And there's sort of the idea of warming up your brain and getting going and getting up to speed and things like that. Part of the problem with using that spam is that you kind of build up this habit. Like when you moved your overlord, you clicked it, 10,000 times to move it forward. You may want to take some time and consider how you're spamming in the beginning of the game, and trying to do spam things that are actually sequences of actions that you use in the real game.
Okay.
And stay away from the spam that's basically reinforcing bad habits, like clicking the overlord 1,000 times to get it to one place.
Yeah. So usually I'm either doing like control group spam or camera key spam. There might be some more efficient ones, or like 4S, right? So control group for hatchery and then select larva. I think those are probably okay.
Yeah, those are pretty solid.
Okay. I don't know why I do that, where I box every single building to make things.
You may want to replace your box spam of the workers with click spam.
Okay. For a while, I was clicking each individual mineral patch, like just going up and down, so that might be...
That's a good one. One that I like too, that's actually really beneficial, is try to click each drone just as it returns the mineral. Because in an ideal situation, that's the drone that you're going to build something with.
Yeah.
So it actually becomes this sort of reflex for you to grab the drones that are best to build things with.
That makes sense.
Most common time that you're going to use a box is going to be whenever you're under pressure. And whenever there's a unit that's moving, because it's easier. But long term, the click is going to be faster. And the cool thing too about practicing clicking is that you're going to be increasing your mouse accuracy. So it's going to be useful to you when you need it in more time sensitive situations.
For sure.
There is a small advantage to boxing a queen just for injects. And the reason why a lot of people do it is because if you miss, the queen is the highest selection priority thing, unit or building in Zerg. So no matter what, if you box and the queen is anywhere in that box, you can inject, because the queen's inject command card the queen's command card with inject on it will always be the first thing on the list.
I think if I'm making a control group specifically for injecting, that I shouldn't be using like any boxing or clicking for it, though. I should just hit 5 and then inject. Otherwise, I think that's just a worthless control group, which is fine, because then I can use it for for either army or something of that nature. But
yeah, for injecting, it's there are some people who believe that there's one right way to inject and everyone else is wrong. I'm more of the camp that there are advantages and disadvantages of each of the different styles of injecting. Yeah. And the advantage of the box click or the click with no control group is that you have more control. The Wandering Queen syndrome literally just does not happen ever because you don't have the control group. While it may be a little bit slower, the professional Zergs that I've talked to, and other Zergs as well, have always sort of said that the main thing about injecting that makes it powerful, that makes you a powerful injector, is remembering to do it on time, more so than making sure you do it super, super fast. So I think that the control, the trade for the control versus speed is what you have to consider. Do I want to sacrifice a little bit of speed for some more control and the utility of an extra control group? Well, and that's the other thing too, right? That's the thing that a lot of people don't really consider when they're thinking about control groups is you always have to take a look at your game and say, okay, how many actions, how much time, we can turn time into actions because it's easier to count. But the goal is, how much time am I spending setting up this control group? And how much time do I gain by using the control group? Yeah. And like I said before, usually it's about 2 to 3 uses for each setup. If you're using 2 or more, using the control group 2 or more times, it's going to be a net gain for you in time of execution.
Yeah.
The other thing specifically with control groups is what they allow you to do is they allow you to camera locations too, right? They allow you to set things up in a non-time sensitive moment and then use that speed in the time sensitive moments. So you're kind of doing actions ahead of time. Yeah. You could say, oh, well, in the beginning of the game, I have to set up all my cameras. It's like, yeah, but you have nothing better to do anyway. So why would you not do it? You know? Mm-hmm. So you make that sort of gain by doing that. Well, that was interesting. Many clicks
for no reason.
Screen for yes, definitely no reason. A little bit of mineral murder there, I think, into the gas geyser, but didn't stay on the screen long enough to see it. Are you in the habit of pressing return cargo after you send to gas?
For the most part, I might not do it when I'm getting attacked by Zerglings, but Usually, usually I do hit C, and then it returns all of my things.
Same thing there. It seems like a lot of times it's with the overlords.
Yeah,
it can be really difficult to sort of get these ingrained habits of inefficiency out of you. So one strategy that you might want to use to approach it is to just say, okay, I'm going to make sure whenever I send an overlord somewhere, I think about where it's going to go and I click exactly where I want it to go every single time.
Yeah.
And also the not spam clicking move commands in the beginning of the game is going to help that out as well.
Okay.
Small thing in that location, if you're going to use the queens to pick off the overlords, shift click underneath where they are instead of right clicking their location on an attack move.
Yeah.
You have a better chance to pull it off. And I did see you doing that another time, but this particular time, yeah, you're doing just clicking on the overlord.
Yeah.
Which is fine if you just want them to move out of the way, but
if you're trying to go for the kill.
Yeah. Also, you box your creep tumors.
Yeah, I do. I need to work on that.
Yep.
That's literally just habit.
Mm-hmm. Well, especially with creep tumors too, we haven't really seen any games with a lot of creep spread just yet. But control clicking is the way to go.
Yeah.
As soon as you have 2 creep tumors to spread, control clicking is where it's at. The way that you did it just there, you're kind of boxing in the direction that you're spreading the creep, ends up being about the same amount of time as clicking. So you can kind of afford to do that. The problem, though, is that you're prioritizing speed over placement, which is just straight up a mistake. You should always be spreading to the very edge of creep, even if it takes you a little bit longer at first. In time, your mouse accuracy is going to be such that it takes the same amount of time.
Yeah.
Or like virtually the same amount of time. You just move your mouse a little bit more, maybe that's like equal to a millimeter of mouse movement on your mouse pad or something like that. Mm-hmm. It's going to be rough at first because you're going to take longer to spread creep. But in the long run, one of the big things, like pretty much all the big creep spreaders do, you watch any Suri plays, you watch Dimaga of old and Scarlet every single time, always to the very, very edge of the creep. That is the main determining factor of like the great creep spreaders versus the normally okay creep spreaders. Nice multitasking. Good use of control groups. Yeah, that was a box inject.
Yeah, it was. I tend to do that like more when I'm busy with other things, probably just out of habit.
You do the box inject when the box inject will hurt you the most. Because when you're in that time sensitive scenario, that's when you want to do the inject as fast as possible, which is why the click is going to be much faster and it'll get you back to that battle faster.
For real.
But that is a very common thing when players feel stressed and they feel they need to do something fast, they box. But like I said, it's a bit ironic.
Yeah, it's not very logical.
It's one of the things about instincts and doing things that are intuitive is that really game sense and instincts and things like that pretty much ought to be ignored in the beginning of your development as a Starcraft player. Because if you just go, if you go based on your gut, how to do things correctly, you're going to get like, maybe 50-50 efficient ways to do things versus non-efficient.
Yeah.
And then you end up developing bad habits. It's when you have practiced very specifically what it is that you need to do in the most efficient way that you start building up these habits of being efficient, and you'll start having these strange combinations where you're like, oh, wow, I just kind of did that more efficiently than I normally would because I'm just used to, your mind becomes used to calculating that efficiency and doing it in the best possible way. So be careful of your instincts.
Apparently, I really like boxing queens and buildings.
I mean, you just like boxing everything, man. Another thing that you tend to do, and this is going to come with practice in your mechanics and focus, is you second guess yourself a lot. So you'll have the queen selected and you'll reselect it so that you can do something. Or you'll have a control group selected and you'll just reselect the control group to do a thing. And that's just due to the idea of being confident in your mechanics. And if you practice them a little bit more deliberately and focus on them, and it's important that you sort of invest in loss here and allow yourself to make the mistakes. Because if you're constantly second guessing yourself and double checking yourself, then the mistakes will slide by and they'll become habits and you'll just get used to them. Same thing about creep.
Yeah,
you're boxing each individual tumor despite the fact that multiple are on the screen and you could be control clicking.
Yeah, creep is like literally the worst part of my play.
You know what's funny? Lakota does the exact same thing. I did a mechanical analysis session with him, I think like months ago. And I was just like, that's, it's huge, right? He's like, yeah, I know. Just set up the scenario in Salt where you're starting to spread creep, get yourself on 3 bases or whatever, and then just save that point and then load it and load it and load it and load it.
Yeah, sounds good.
One quick thing about moving units, you need to move them really fast. Like, oh my God, it's a planetary nexus. Crap, I need to run. It's less mouse travel time for you to go to your minimap and click the location you want to go to. But it requires a lot more mouse accuracy. When you have your mouse accuracy up to the appropriate level, it's going to be faster.
Okay.
But again, it's that situation where your instincts are telling you, oh God, quick, scroll the screen and just click a billion times. But just one quick movement to the mini map and clicking to the right location is going to be great, especially in that position where you wanted to snipe that text structure. I think the High Templar building.
Yeah.
If you right click on the mini map where you want to go, you actually can just left click exactly where you just were, and then you can retarget specifically what you want to do at that moment. Let's go through the things that we saw, inefficiencies that we saw, and we can just sort of say, okay, these are the things that you decide, as the player are most important. Those are the things you're going to work on first. We can kind of order them up a little bit.
Yeah.
But the main things that I have here are change your spam. So that's the useful spam, doing actions, building good habits with your spam instead of building bad habits. And that encompasses a lot of things.
Okay.
Always spreading your creep to the edge.
Okay.
Clicking, not boxing.
Yeah.
We have the Wandering Queen. I wrote down the Wandering Queen transfuse, but have you decided to not use that control group anymore and always do the click inject? Or have you decided to always use the control group when injecting?
I haven't decided yet. So cool. I'm going to write that down and then think about it, and then I'll make a decision on that after.
Excellent. Good. 2 settings changes. 1 to consider. 1, turning alerts off. 2, changing life bars to damaged.
Okay.
Mouse accuracy on base locations. So practice your mouse accuracy. Actually, that kind of falls into the change your spam. So when you're setting up your base cameras, practice your mouse accuracy in the minimap and try to get the exact correct place at the correct time. Let's see. Yep, and that's it. So that's all the stuff that I have listed here. What do you feel is the most important thing? What do you feel is number 1 that you want to work on?
It's either clicking and not boxing or spreading creep to the edge, which are both kind of mouse accuracy things.
Cool. Yeah, and you can kind of do those together. So the way that I would probably approach that is just get into Salt and creep spread the whole map and then do it again and again and again. Okay. Probably with just 1 queen, because when you get to multiple queens, it can be a little bit difficult. You can also practice your injecting at the same time. So get 3 bases set up, practice your injecting while creep spreading. all together
Okay.
at one. Don't worry about spending your money. And that's going to get you started on clicking things. And it's going to put you into a situation where you have this small space, this sort of like constrained number of actions that you're going to make, so you can focus on them and make sure you're always clicking on them. And then from there, move out and into sort of taking one thing at a time. Like, okay, overlords.
Yeah.
I click once to send them where I want to send them, and I don't box them. I click them. And just getting used to that one step at a time, and then going from the creep into the click boxing, I think will be probably your best bet for improving that stuff.
Yeah, sounds good, man.
All right. Thanks for being the recorded guinea pig, people of YouTube's.
Yeah.
This has been Brian, a giant gnome, Williams, who is a sandboxer. My name is JaKaTaK. And as always, thanks for watching. If you have any questions, comments, criticisms, concerns, or anything beginning with letter C, please leave them in the comment section below, and I will see you again soon.